Discover the shocking transformation, how one night made Catherine de Medici a ruthless queen. Catherine Moreau pressed her paintbrush onto the canvas, her heart racing in rhythm with the bustling streets of New Orleans outside her window. Color splashed wildly, but her mind drifted. Trapped in a voodoo shop, she ran a space burdened with spectral expectations from her matriarchal lineage. The whispers of her ancestors echoed like shadows in the back of her mind. They demanded both honor and sacrifice. Life painted in shades of red, but her true artistry remained a dream, distant as the fading light of dusk. One summer evening, while mixing shades that constantly escaped her grip, Catherine's world tilted. Through the clattering of evening life, she overheard a conversation just outside the shop. She peered through the gauzy curtains to see Mrs. Baptiste, the wise elder of their community, sharing secrets with a slick real estate mogul whose white suit glinted like a predator under the last lights of day. Catherine's stomach twisted as she caught snippets mention of a redevelopment plan that would erase her neighborhood. Betrayal surged through her veins like fire. It wasn't merely four walls being torn down, it was her identity, her history, her roots. Shouldn't her family's legacy be protected? But how could she honor ancestors whose spirits loomed so large when all she craved was the freedom of her brush on a blank canvas? In that moment, she felt paralyzed, torn. Vengeance threatened to seep into her art, darkening her heart. The fear of losing everything made her clench the brush tighter, drawing thin lines that felt increasingly suffocating. The store, filled with talismans and voodoo dolls, felt more like a prison than a sanctuary. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Catherine decided to reach out to a local historian, a man whose knowledge of New Orleans was as rich as the deep brown of gumbo. He unraveled hidden threads of her family history, stories of resilience woven into the very fabric of the city. The tremors of history coursed through her. Her ancestors were fighters, but the weight of her responsibility settled like a stone in her chest. Her spirit sparked with determination to take action against that mogul. Yet every step felt like a minefield, the ground shifting beneath her as shockwaves of doubt skittered through her soul. Just as she began to strategize, a friend-turned-foe emerged, planting seeds of betrayal that began to gnaw at her mind like an insatiable pest. The whirlwind of fear twisted. Was she destined for revenge that could overshadow her creativity? Or was she condemned to remain the dutiful heir of her family's legacy, shackled with inhibitions? Each moment danced dangerously on the precipice of despair. How would she navigate this treacherous maze? Catherine stood at the crossroads of her own legacy, the hum of history and unrealized dreams clashing in her heart. The uncertainty of what lay ahead was overwhelming, the suspense tightening like a noose around her thoughts. Would she rise to become the fierce queen her lineage demanded, or would she falter and lose everything she loved, including herself? The stakes were impossibly high, with every choice weighing heavily on her soul. Catherine pierced through the approaching darkness, holding her breath, poised to face whatever came next. Catherine's heart pounded in her chest as she scrolled through her family history notes late into the night, illuminated only by the flickering glow of her desk lamp. The details were overwhelming, each anecdote about her ancestors thick with tales of resilience, courage, and sacrifice. With each passing moment, one name resonated louder than the rest: Marie de Medicis, her great-great-grandmother, a woman who had faced insurmountable odds, yet taken a stand for what she believed in. Catherine felt an urge to channel that strength. She needed to redefine her narrative and claim her legacy instead of letting it claim her. Her thoughts twisted and turned. What would Marie do if faced with the encroachment of greed on her heritage? Catherine's fingers drummed nervously on the desk as she recalled vivid stories from her childhood, tales whispered by elders about spirits that roamed the night, guarding the hearts of their descendants. Channeling these spirits was a powerful practice, yet it felt more daunting than compelling in her moment of crisis. She needed to take action, but caution gripped her. pulling her into the orbit of fear that had threatened to paralyze her creativity. With the dawn still hours away, determination bloomed in her mind. A new idea began to take shape. What if she used her art as a weapon of resistance? What if her next exhibit could serve as a rallying call to the community? She envisioned a series of pieces depicting the vibrant history of her neighborhood, the heartbeat of New Orleans, details captured in bold strokes that shouted pride and heritage instead of merely whispering the tales of her ancestors. Her eyes sparkled with the glint of a new purpose, transforming the dread within her into raw energy, but as the sun peeked over the horizon, pushing shadows back into the recesses of the morning, doubt flooded her once more. Her mind flicked to the real estate mogul, a powerful adversary with resources and connections that could sink her endeavors before they even began. Catherine paced the room, letting the intensity of her thoughts swirl around her. Was it wise to confront him directly? Or would such a confrontation lead to her ruin? Suddenly, her phone buzzed, snapping her from the spiral of insecurities. It was a message from the historian, offering to meet. "Let's talk about how to protect what's ours," he wrote, each word pulsating with an urgency that made her skin tingle. A flicker of hope ignited. The meeting could provide the strategic insight she needed to navigate this intricate path unwinding before her. In those brief minutes, she made up her mind to embrace her heritage and write the next chapter of her story, a chapter infused with action and defiance. Living in New Orleans meant being entrenched in a rich culture that did not yield to outsiders easily. Also, she realized that she couldn't do it alone. She needed allies, people who felt the stakes as deeply as she did. Resolutely, she gathered her materials, sketching quickly, allowing her imagination to spill over the pages in a frenzy. Ideas poured down like rain, each brush stroke bringing her a step closer to the woman she wished to become, a fierce protector of her roots. But as she painted furiously, the nagging thought returned: acting without carefully strategizing could lead her to make a misstep. Would she risk everything her family stood for and push forward? The echo of a door creaking open in the back of her mind sent a shiver through her spine, a reminder that not all allies had the same intentions. What lurking betrayals awaited her amongst the shadows she couldn't yet see? The idea quickened her pulse as she prepared for her meeting. The time was inching closer to confront those who threatened her past, but also, perhaps, her future. Would she be ready when the moment arose? Catherine sat on the edge of her bed, feeling the cool fabric of her sheets beneath her fingertips as she wrestled with the chaotic emotions swirling within. The morning sun streamed through the window, illuminating the sketches spread out before her, but they offered her no solace. Each image was not just a painting but a representation of her voice, one she felt a desperate need to project into the world. As much as she wanted to channel the bravery of Marie de Medicis, fear tangled with her ambition. Could courage truly exist alongside apprehension? With a deep breath, she stood up and crossed her room, seeking the sanctuary of her tiny studio space. Surrounded by colors and canvases, the familiar scent of linseed oil reassured her that this was where she transformed thoughts into action. The historian's message replayed in her mind, awakening her still raw hope. As much as she craved to structure her defenses against the looming threat, she knew she couldn't allow herself to become paralyzed by indecision. The first brush stroke was hesitant, straying away from the confident lines she once wielded effortlessly. Each detail, once a celebration of culture, now felt like a confrontation. How could she illustrate the vibrancy of her neighbors when she was uncertain of her own place in this struggle? Anguish spilled onto the canvas, transforming her initial vision into an inky whirl of doubt and passion. She felt the urge to erase it all, but that urge clashed with the burgeoning determination inside her. Time slipped away as she wrestled with the conflicting thoughts. She had prepared for the meeting with the historian, but now she felt the weight of her naivety. This was more than sharing history, it was about crafting a battle plan. How could she convey the urgency of her mission without alienating those she needed by her side? Forcing herself to pause, Catherine turned her thoughts inward. What was it she truly wanted? To protect her heritage? To stand toe-to-toe with someone who wielded power like a weapon? Or perhaps, to unify her neighborhood not through confrontation but through collaboration, fostering a sense of shared destiny? The realization struck her with clarity. There was strength in vulnerability and power in the collective story. It echoed with the very essence of her ancestors. A plan began to crystallize in her mind, interwoven with the threads of artistic expression, community awareness, and strategic alliances. She decided to reach out to local artists and community leaders before her meeting. Instead of rushing into confrontation with the mogul, she'd create a network, one that spoke with a louder voice than any single heart. They would illustrate not just their struggles, but how, together, they could carve a space against the encroaching darkness. With a newfound sense of purpose, Catherine picked up her brush again, now with a fiercer resolve. Each stroke was deliberate, powerful. She reveled in the process of creation, channeling more than just her anxiety. She began to visualize an exhibition, a story told through a series of interlinked artworks that showcased their shared journey and resilience. Her ancestral spirit thrummed with life, but in the back of her mind lurked a troubling question: would this plan work? Were the people she needed truly willing to fight alongside her? The fear of rejection gnawed at her. What if they dismissed her ideas and independence? As she stepped back to assess her piece, a blend of pride and trepidation washed over her. The stakes were higher than ever, and she couldn't afford to fail. The time for her meeting with the historian approached, but it was layering the hearts and minds of her neighbors into her vision that would be her greatest challenge. With determination, she strapped her easel to her back and stepped out, threading her way through the streets of New Orleans, fueling her resolve. Carefully organized notes fanned out in her mind, accompanied by invitations she planned to extend. It was time to advocate, to fight, and to transform her creations into rallying points for those who treasured the rich fabric of their shared history. With every step she took, the reality of her situation pressed closer. The countdown to confrontation with the mogul loomed in her mind, intensifying her anxiety. Would she find the allies she sought in time? Or would she remain isolated, forging ahead into a community that might see her as a threat rather than an advocate? The weight was suffocating, twisting deeper into her thoughts. She had embarked on a path with no clear ending, and the meeting with the historian could be the beginning of a hall of mirrors, each reflecting a different possibility. Would she emerge with clarity, or would she find herself lost in the echoes of her ancestors' struggles? The midday sun beat down on Catherine as she navigated the bustling streets, the vibrant sounds of New Orleans swirling around her like the colors on her canvas. Each footfall echoed a determination that had taken root within her, and she took a moment to pause, inhaling the scent of gumbo wafting from a nearby cafe. It was a grounding reminder of her purpose, to protect culture and heritage, to speak those stories through her art and action. Scraps of paper began to fill her pockets, names, ideas, the rough outlines of her vision. As she entered a small community art space, the familiar buzz of creativity enveloped her. Brushes, paints, and unfinished works lined the walls, awaiting the hands that would breathe life into them. Here, she felt a flicker of hope against her swirling uncertainties. Catherine scanned the room, noting artists engaged in passionate discussions, gesturing wildly, sharing sketches and inspirations. But beneath their enthusiasm lurked a tension she couldn't ignore. They too were wary of an uncertain future. How would she break through their apathy and convince them that their talents could unite rather than divide? Her heart raced as she approached Mia, a local muralist with a reputation for fierce realism. "Mia," Catherine began, a tremor lacing her voice. "I have an idea, a project that could not only showcase our stories but also give us a fighting chance against the threats we're facing." Mia turned, curiosity sparking in her eye. "Go on. What are you thinking?" Catherine felt the adrenaline surge within her as she articulated her plan, outlining the exhibition as a tapestry of their struggles and triumphs. She could see the flickering interest in Mia's gaze, but deep down lurked an instinctive reminder of her own fear. What if this resonated only with her, creating a rift instead of a bridge? "I love it, but there's a catch," Mia countered, crossing her arms with an assertive confidence. "Not all of us are ready to fight, Catherine. Some just want to paint and live their lives without conflict. Can you take that into account?" The word stung, exposing the fear Catherine had invariably tried to shield. It wasn't enough to light a fire in her, she had to ignite an inferno in all of them. "I understand," she said, measuring her response carefully. But what if I find a way to make it about art enjoyment, community pride? If we can draw people in with beauty, perhaps they'll see the importance of standing together. Mia uncrossed her arms, engaged. You might just be onto something there. But if you ask for participation, you better be inclusive and honest about what's at stake. Otherwise, you might face backlash. Her words struck Catherine deeply. To illustrate a problem while dodging the realities behind it would be a folly she could not afford. This was about consequences, and they were too high to ignore. Driven by sudden inspiration, she began sketching ideas with swift precision on the gallery's paper, envisioning not just a showcase, but a movement that embraced vulnerability. What if these artworks could serve as a dialogue itself? A canvas beneath the stairway, protruding like a call to action. But doubts clawed back at her aspirations. Could she communicate urgency without overwhelming the artists? The precarious balance between their individual artistic identities and the collective mission was formidable. Yet the thought of pleading an individual case felt overwhelmingly lonely. Over the next few days, Catherine set out to invite peers and budding artists. By spreading her vision through whispered conversations and casual meetups, she broke down walls of hesitance. The fear of rejection still loomed large, but she clung tight to the whispers of excitement that began to echo in response. As she left each evening, a new sense of focus pulled her in. Plans began to crystallize, and she allowed herself to dream of a vibrant opening night, filled with support, discussions, and the muffled thrum of a community unexpectedly awakened. Yet with all these ideas nestled within her, she couldn't help but wonder how they would coalesce. Fear nestled in her chest. Tonight, she would attend the meeting with the historian. Would she find clarity amongst a cacophony of artists? Or would she spiral further into uncertainty, teetering on the edge of her aspirations? With her heart pounding, she took one deep breath before stepping into the dimly lit venue. The air was thick with tension. It was time to face the unknown head-on, a confrontation waiting just beyond the door. Would her plan hold enough weight, or would it shatter like glass, leaving her alone once more? Catherine pushed the door open and stepped inside, the dim light revealing a room filled with faces she only half recognized. The historian, a wiry man with glasses slipping down his nose, stood at the front, gesticulating passionately about the importance of narratives in preserving culture. But as she surveyed the gathering, anxiety twisted in her stomach. Would they welcome her vision or dismiss it as naive? As she settled into a corner, she wrote furiously in her sketchbook, pouring her thoughts onto the page. Ideas flowed unrestrained, her heart beating in time with the tapping of her pencil against paper. If her voice could resonate here, she knew it would bridge a chasm, yet doubt encircled her like smoke. The meeting began, voices clashing together in an energetic debate. Catherine watched, captivated and intimidated by their fervor. It was a theater of opinions, and she felt herself shrinking in the background. Each artist had a firm understanding of their style and a vision that was distinctly theirs. She longed to express that unlikeliness could be captivating, that collaborative artistry could be revolutionary, but the words felt like driftwood caught amid turbulent waves. History shapes identity, the historian proclaimed, his voice rising above the din. If we don't tell our stories, who will? His words were like a call to arms, yet Catherine sensed an odd blend of resolve and trepidation among the artists surrounding her. They sought recognition, but at what cost? As hands shot up, individuals began to contribute thoughts on preserving their backgrounds, their stories half-dressed in the fear of irrelevance. They discussed techniques and styles as if their identities could be encapsulated in paint strokes alone. Did anyone else feel the urgency to break down the barriers of personal isolation that echoed louder than the artist within? Was she the only one yearning for connection? Catherine's heart raced. This was her moment. With a deep breath, she interjected, what if instead of merely documenting the past, we projected our future into our work? Silence cascaded over the room, skepticism and intrigue mingling in the air. What if we guest artists could collaborate, each of us weaving our narratives into one larger story that invites those outside our circles? A few skeptical glances shot her way, but she pressed on. Let us turn this into a dialogue. An exhibition that transcends mere aesthetics. We can reflect who we are and showcase the urgency of our fight through art that speaks of hope and resilience. Mia caught her eye, and in that fleeting moment, Catherine saw a spark of recognition. The tension in her shoulders eased just a fraction. You really think they'd buy into that? Mia asked, the challenge unspoken but clear. What if they don't find their identities in your vision? A flicker of irritation ignited within Catherine. Then I'll show them. This isn't just about convincing them, it's about our necessity to be heard. I need to show myself too. Which means you have to offer something real, Mia replied, her gaze steady. No hiding behind pretty pictures. They need to sense your authenticity. The validation pulled at Catherine, igniting a fierce determination. Her struggle was shared, the revelation felt like crashing waves against the stony shore. She realized it was no longer about just presenting an idea but about laying herself bare. Was she ready to confront this level of vulnerability? Pushing back her insecurities, she envisioned the artwork, a tapestry sewn together by countless hands and hearts, a beacon of defiance against silence. That was the essence of the plan, not merely an exhibit, but an intertwining of lives that celebrates individuality amid collective experience. Then let us collaborate, she declared, heart pounding, each word emphatically layered with conviction. Let us paint the full spectrum of our existence, our struggles, our joys. It doesn't matter how we do it, just that we try. As she finished, a hum of conversation emerged around her, each artist considering the challenge she proposed. Perhaps she had sown the seeds of a new vision, something that could thrive beyond her own expectations, yet as adrenaline coursed through her, doubt flickered in the back of her mind. What if the uncertainties were too great? Would they embrace the proposal, or could this conflict escalate, risking everything she hoped to achieve? Catherine's sense of accomplishment was washed away by the uncertainty of tomorrow. The questions loomed larger than ever. Would they unite in her vision, or fracture further apart? As she stood amid murmurs of nascent ideas, one thing was clear, the real struggle had only just begun. The following days blurred together as Catherine navigated her growing anxiety. After proposing her vision of collective artistry, she felt a crucible of expectations settle upon her shoulders. Each encounter with other artists felt heavy with unspoken judgments, but determination flickered in her heart like a candle in a drafty room. She had opened a door, and now it was the daunting task of building a bridge. In the workshop she shared with Mia, Catherine spread out sketches, colors, and concepts, but her passion conflicted with uncertainty. Every time she tried to elaborate her vision, she caught glimpses of skepticism reflected in her peers' eyes. Were they seeing her radical idea for what it was, a desperate plea for validation? Their impression could shift like sand beneath her feet, and she couldn't afford that. What if they don't get it? She asked one evening, frustration lacing her voice. What if they think I'm just some kid playing architect with their souls? Then you must be brave, Mia replied, applying color to her own canvas without looking up. All of us have something to lose. The question is how far you're willing to push through the discomfort. Catherine paused, absorbing the weight in Mia's words. It wasn't just about her, it was about the broader narrative woven into the fabric of their collective experience. Taking a deep breath, she shifted her focus back to a blank canvas. She envisioned vectors of emotion flowing from the pieces she and her peers would create, intertwining the chaos of their experiences into something beautiful. She had to dig deeper, determined to explore her own vulnerabilities. Catherine sought out individual conversations with fellow artists. It proved difficult to step into that realm of intimacy. She approached Elias, a painter known for his moody abstracts. Can I show you something? She asked, nervously flipping her sketchbook toward him. He looked contemplative, interested. Sure, he said, flipping through the pages. His brow furrowed, and when he stopped, he pointed to a particular piece where she had started integrating surreal elements, twisted trees intertwined like hands grasping for connection. I don't know, she started. It's visceral, he interrupted, meeting her gaze. Show this. Push into the darkness and let it bleed onto the canvas. Don't shy away. Catherine felt her pulse quicken, heat creeping into her cheeks. This was the direction she needed, a spark igniting within her. But what if it's too harsh? Too raw? Are you asking me, or yourself? He asked bluntly. Art thrives in discomfort. That's where the truth lies. His conviction reinforced her resolve, and she began to see the swirling doubts as merely layers waiting to be stripped away. Each conversation revealed a seam of authenticity that she craved. Her discussions with artists about their childhood traumas, the struggles of immigrants, and their battles against self-doubt unraveled the silky threads of superficiality surrounding her. Catherine learned the transformative power of vulnerability, both fortifying and terrifying. And yet, she felt the inevitable tremor of doubt creeping back. What if they rejected her intention? What if stepping into this honesty exposed too much? Sitting alone one night with her thoughts, her heart thumped against her chest as the realization hit her. Was she merely teetering on the brink of vulnerability, or was she prepared to plunge into the depths? Real change demanded sacrifice, but could she truly commit to laying bare her fears, the core of who she was? As she wrestled with these questions, the image of their collective work transformed in her mind. It was not just an exhibition, it was the embodiment of raw emotions and interwoven lives, fiercely pulsating with every heartbeat that contributed to it. With a renewed sense of purpose, Catherine took up her brush, painting furiously late into the night, letting doubt spill onto the canvas along with color. Her narrative was beginning to take shape, but as each stroke solidified her message, shadows of disagreement loomed larger. What if she miscalculated where her heart led her? The next morning, she found the room filled unexpectedly with artists, all eager to see one another's work, each one willing to take a leap toward collaboration. Yet, as they gathered with hopeful anticipation, the heart-thumping question lingered: would their collective vision clash or collaborate? What came next would either forge an unbreakable alliance or shatter the very foundation she had built. Catherine stood at the precipice, ready to confront the convergence of dreams and realities that could define not only her future as an artist but her growth as an individual. With her heart racing, she softly murmured to herself, "Are we ready?" The moment of reckoning was approaching fast, and she knew it wasn't time to hold back. As the artists gathered, a charged atmosphere enveloped the workshop. Glances zoomed in and out like flickering images, brimming with anticipation and implicit apprehension. Catherine stood amidst the gathering, her heart racing as her eyes swept over the faces, each one representing a spectrum of emotions and aspirations. She took a breath, feeling the air thrum with each artist's unspoken desires. How could she merge the threads of their visions into something whole? As she prepared to speak, her confidence wavered in tandem with her resolve. Perhaps they all expected her to present a polished blueprint, but the truth was a chaotic swirl of ideas battling for clarity within her. "Thank you for coming together," Catherine began, her voice slightly quivering but strong enough to cut through the nervous silence. "I've been thinking about how we can each bring our truths into this project." A ripple of murmurs responded. Mia, ever the supportive anchor, nodded encouragingly. Yet, she noticed Elias leaning against the wall, one brow raised, as if daring Catherine to dig deeper. The challenge hung in the air, demanding she strip away the layers of self-doubt and get honest. "I've created something," she hesitated, "that embraces the raw, messy elements of existence. I don't want to present sanitized stories anymore. I believe we should let our discomfort shape the narrative." She realized she had invoked a familiar tension, and it sparked more than just the interest of her peers. What if we allowed ourselves to be vulnerable in front of one another? Not to just share the highs but to wade through the lows, our own shadows. The silence stretched, punctuated by the uneasy shuffle of feet. "I'm not sure about that," said Angela, a sculptor known for her delicate forms. "People don't come to art to feel bad. They need an escape, not a reminder of their struggles." Catherine felt a quickening pulse of fear. Angela's voice sliced through her resolve, fueling the nagging doubt that had haunted her since revealing her vision. The thought that perhaps her instincts were misguided crept back in. Yet, she had started this journey for a reason. But isn't that where the real connection lies? Catherine pressed, her voice steadying. Art reflects life, and life is messy. If we hide our struggles, we lose the essence of what binds us together. She met Angela's gaze, hoping to ignite a spark of understanding. Elias spoke up. I agree with Catherine. We've all faced darkness. We can't ignore it. His voice cut through the room with authority, and Catherine sensed the tide shifting. A few nods of agreement rippled through the group, but the overall energy remained tense. Skeptics were still entrenched. Can she truly lead them into uncharted territories? Feeling emboldened, Catherine decided to paint a vision of what they could create, a tapestry woven from each artist's story. Let us let our fears speak on the canvas. Let us embrace our wounds. Each piece can be a part of this emotional exchange. But the lingering silence suggested an uncomfortable chasm remained. She recognized the faces before her held more than ambiguity, they carried expectations, apprehensions, and a pressing urgency to shield themselves from self-exposure. Suddenly, a thought knocked against her consciousness like a static voice. Would she be the only one bearing this weight? Was her willingness to be vulnerable a risk that could fracture alliances? We can try it, Mia suggested softly, her voice a soothing undercurrent against the rumble of tension in the room. Art can also be about healing. Perhaps it starts with us. Catherine's heart fluttered. If even one person was willing to journey into discomfort, it felt like a step towards navigating the treacherous waters of honesty. Yet, she feared a rejection from the rest might overshadow that glimmer. As the discussions began to flow, some hesitant, others louder with conviction, Catherine felt the pressure rising like a tide. This was the moment she had grasped for, but with it came a potential fracture. Each choice she navigated could either resonate with raw resonance or lead to a wound too painful to bear. The minutes stretched like eternity as she braced for feedback, both good and bad, weighing heavily on her spirit. With her dreams hanging delicately in the balance, she pondered if her courage would summon the rest to follow, or would it set them all teetering on the edge of despair. The moment felt palpable, and Catherine understood she was standing at the frontier of a transformation that could redefine not just their art but the essence of who they were as individuals. Yet, as they exchanged words, a tension emerged. How much of their truths were they willing to expose, and was she prepared to bear the consequences? As the meeting unfolded, she felt her clarity on the situation waver. With every passing moment, it became clearer she wasn't just leading an artistic endeavor, she was forcing a reckoning that would define not only her trajectory but the very foundations of their intertwined destinies. What if she unleashed something that couldn't be contained? With each passing heartbeat, the anxiety morphed into a tangible entity, taunting her resolve and whispering, "Are you ready to face the fallout?" Catherine felt every heartbeat echo like a tolling bell, underscoring the tension woven into the fabric of the room. As the diverse voices danced around her, she realized she was hovering between becoming a galvanizing force and the harbinger of discontent. What path would define this gathering? Would she be the creator of change or merely the catalyst for discord? Mia's tentative support appeared fragile, a mere thread against the tidal wave of skepticism cascading from the corners of the room. Catherine could sense the churning emotions, fear lingering just under the surface, inhibiting full transparency. She knew she had to fan the flames of their courage, but how? Let us start with sharing one thing that scares us about this project. Catherine's voice cut through the rising tide of chatter, forcing attention back to her. The challenge hung in the air as if dipped in adrenaline. She took a breath, preparing not just to invite vulnerability but also to expose her own. Silence fell again. As the seconds ticked on, each gaze awaited a spark. Would she be brave enough to share first? I'll go, she decided, breaking the ice while feeling every gaze like a spotlight. I'm scared that if I open up about my past, it will change how you see me. I'm terrified of how my vulnerabilities might alter the perception that has taken me years to build. The honesty felt like cutting deep, but rather than shrinking away, she felt her footing strengthen. Was this the touchstone she needed? Angela leaned forward, her face softening. I didn't expect that from you. I guess that's the point, Catherine replied, her heart quickening. If I can share this, maybe you can too. Elias' expression turned contemplative, and he shifted uncomfortably. I worry that we'll expose ourselves and reveal nothing but darkness. His raw honesty, unguarded and sincere, absorbed the tension in the room. Encouraged, Catherine expanded on the idea. But what if we use that darkness as a canvas? What if our fears create something beautiful? Would it be so much worse than remaining mute? The room weighed heavily with contemplative energy now, scraped edges beginning to reveal themselves. Catherine could feel the others processing the gravity of her suggestion, but skepticism still loomed like a specter. How could she shake off the expectation of polished facades? Angela hesitated, then shared, I fear that by putting our pain on display, we'll lose the audience. Isn't art about creating allure and mystery? As Catherine weighed Angela's concern against her vision, anxiety clawed at her. Would they abandon her pursuit before it truly began? But she felt the seed of determination blossom, a flickering flame unwilling to be snuffed out. Maybe it's not about losing them but about inviting them into something authentic, Catherine suggested, ready now to dissect her own fears. Perhaps our art can present a path through vulnerability, a chance for an audience to see their reflections within our struggles. The conversations ignited, morphing from one voice to another, creating a weaving pattern of shared vulnerability and risk. Ideas bounced off one another, and even the skeptics, Angela included, began to nod slowly, albeit cautiously. Catherine realized this was a critical moment of reclamation for them all. She was leading them toward a collective, sometimes intimidating, definition of artistry rooted in honesty. But the path was still fraught with potential injuries. How much would they be willing to share? At what cost? As discussions continued, Catherine felt a longing to probe deeper, her internal compass steering her toward navigating the complexities of their differing layers. She needed to structure the subsequent workshops to build genuine trust while respecting the boundaries everyone carried. But who would be the first to retreat? Who might withdraw when the work demanded they confront their own recreated wounds? She was stepping into uncharted territory, a potential minefield, and each choice felt monumental, like a tightrope walk. One misstep could lead to disarray. Just as momentum started to shift towards a collaborative spirit, an unwelcome thought curled in her mind. What if one of them lost that crucial inner battle and walked away from the endeavor entirely? Would her vision of collective transformation hinge upon maintaining the delicate balance of empathy and exposure? Catherine knew if this was to unfold the way she envisioned, she had to execute with unwavering resolve, setting boundaries that fostered safety within openness. The room hummed with discordant emotions, the sensation of possibility mingling with danger. As she gazed at the shifting dynamics, she questioned, could she truly dictate the flow of this journey, or would it spiral unpredictably, pulling her down into depths she couldn't have anticipated? With this haunting uncertainty lingering in the air, her heart tightened. She prepared for the inevitable confrontation that awaited them. They were on the brink of awakening a collective truth, but the real question loomed larger. What darkness might they unearth, and were they all equally prepared to confront it head-on? As the discussions waned into a simmering silence, Catherine felt the collective weight of the room, an unspoken pact hanging between hope and apprehension. She knew their next steps needed to be carefully choreographed, but how could she instigate a dialogue when the stakes felt so personally high for each individual? Swallowing hard, she caught Mia's encouraging glance, but even that felt tenuous. She sensed that the key lay in defining boundaries. To cultivate trust, Catherine would have to confront the gray areas of vulnerability. What about laying down some rules for how we share? She proposed, her voice steady, though her heart raced. We need a safe space, no judgments or critiques of each other's contributions. Only honesty. A ripple of murmurs raced through the group, a blend of curiosity and cautious optimism. Elias pursed his lips, contemplating. Rules can feel confining. What if someone breaches them? Are we prepared to deal with that fallout? Catherine nodded, acknowledging the valid concern. The risk of exposure was no small burden to bear. She leaned into the tension, inviting further deliberation. It's a risk, yes, but I believe a well-defined space can protect us from being consumed by our fears. If we give each other the benefit of the doubt, we might navigate this darkness together. What do you think? The room teetered on the edge of decision, and for Catherine, every tick of the clock reverberated her anxious heartbeat. Each person's hesitance reflected her own internal struggle. How much was she willing to expose herself to facilitate transformation? What revelations lay beneath her carefully crafted surface? Let us see what happens when we set those boundaries, Angela finally conceded. If we're going to take this plunge, we need to fully commit. With that, encouraging nods began to ripple among participants. As Catherine set about refining the structure for the next workshop, a newfound sense of purpose sparked within her. She envisioned diverse activities aimed not just at artistic expression but also at encouraging introspection and dialogue. Each member's individual story, coupled with the common motif of shared vulnerability, could lead to a tapestry rich in meaning and connection. Yet, deep inside, she grappled with nagging questions. What if her desire for authenticity led to deep-seated traumas emerging within the group? Would she fully be prepared if one of them faltered, or would she fall into despair along with them? The echoes of doubt whispered anxiously in her mind, but she suppressed them. She could be the rock that others leaned against, even when they faced their darkest truths. Day by day, Catherine found herself evolving into a more assertive leader. Each conversation strengthened her resolve, illuminating previously shadowed corners in her own psyche. For the first time in years, she envisioned a version of herself not just as a curator of art but as an instigator of profound change, pushing both her own limits and those of others. As workshops commenced, something exhilarating emerged among group members. They began sharing anecdotes rich with nuance that her initial workshops had only scratched. However, every breakthrough carried with it a consequence. With each confession came a sense of liberation but also trepidation, and Catherine felt the growing pressure to maintain equilibrium amidst emerging chaos. Just as the ground seemed stable and they found breathing room in their shared experiences, a troubling incident unfolded. Someone revealed a deeply personal secret that ricocheted through the room and shattered the newfound camaraderie, a story filled with unresolved trauma that demanded urgency and compassion. Catherine felt the air grow thick with an emotional intensity she hadn't anticipated, a specter lurking at the edges of her carefully crafted boundaries. Would her ability to cultivate a safe environment withstand this unexpected storm? As Catherine prepared to navigate this delicate moment, she wondered if healing could be achieved through exposure, or if it would merely unravel everything she'd fought so hard to build. The potential fallout loomed ominously, yet she felt an undeniable pull to dive deeper into the fray. Would she find a way to steer them all toward healing, or would she be the witness to their undoing? The balance of resolve and vulnerability hung precariously in the air, and Catherine braced herself for whatever might come next. Catherine stood before the crowded gallery, the colorful backdrop of art transforming the once blank walls into vibrant expressions of the collective journey they had undertaken. Her heart thudded with a mix of exhilaration and trepidation as she prepared to unveil the culmination of weeks spent navigating the shadows of vulnerability and collaboration. Each piece represented not only personal stories but the essence of community resilience, an unyielding tribute to their shared battles. Finally, the moment arrived. She stepped into the spotlight, addressing the packed room of supporters, artists, and community members. Her voice, once laced with uncertainty, rang with authority. Thank you for joining us tonight. Each artwork you see here embodies a story that is not merely ours alone, but a reflection of our history, our struggle, and ultimately, our triumphs. Through the lens of vulnerability, we have created a tapestry of artistry rooted in authenticity. With every sentence, she felt a surge of purpose and conviction, a stark contrast to the doubt that once paralyzed her. There was no longer a fear of losing herself in the complexities of expression. Instead, she embraced the power of her voice. The lingering whispers of her ancestors echoed reassuringly, validating her newfound identity as a fierce protector of her heritage. As she made her way through the crowd, watching faces illuminate with recognition and understanding, a deeper connection blossomed. Catherine paused in front of one striking piece depicting intertwined figures, vibrant yet raw work that encapsulated the pain, love, and legacy woven throughout generations. The artist stood beside her, their eyes shining with pride, and for the first time, there was a palpable sense of unity. Tonight is a celebration of our fears and our fights, Catherine continued. What we have created is not only art, it's our collective legacy. She felt an unshakable confidence swell within her, every word cascading with affirmation. They weren't just revealing the harsh realities of their pasts, they were igniting an invitation for healing. The warmth in the crowd underscored the essence of community, something she had longed for in her struggle to balance individual dreams with the collective history. As the audience murmured in appreciation and engaged with the pieces, Catherine noticed Elias approach, his expression contemplative. "You've done it, Catherine. We've created something that speaks volumes. Thank you for pushing us into this light," he said earnestly. The validation filled her with a sense of fulfillment, transforming all the uncertainties she had faced into an achievement greater than any singular success. Moments later, Mia stepped forward, eyeing the framed artwork behind them. "You've shown us that vulnerability is powerful. I wasn't sure at first, but the clarity this has brought to our narratives makes all the difference. Your courage to share inspired us all." Catherine felt tears prick her eyes, but these were tears of joy, validation of her growth, her transformation from a hesitant artist more concerned about her personal narrative to a leader who sparked a movement through art. She had conquered her demons, proving that authenticity, when shared, fosters deeper connections and greater strength. That evening, amid feelings of accomplishment and deep connection, an array of voices filled the room with stories of resilience. They weren't just participating in an exhibition, they were forging a new identity rooted in community and individuality, showcasing colors and emotions that had long been hidden. As the night drew to a close, Catherine stood at the center of the gallery, embodying a solid confidence. The fears of losing herself had transformed into a vibrant recognition of who she truly was, a powerful voice armed with creativity and compassion. This was her achievement. Not only did she preserve her heritage, but she redefined her legacy, channeling the spirits of her ancestors into a protective force, each brushstroke contributing to a narrative of resistance. With a final glance around the gallery, she saw her community thriving, fortified by shared understandings and collective creativity. The steps she had taken to confront the looming threats were the very acts that solidified her position, not as merely a product of her lineage but as a fierce matriarch carving new paths through art, dialogue, and courage. The echoes of her heart mingled with the pulse of her surroundings. Confidence radiated from her, an unwavering commitment to protect her roots and amplify her voice. At that moment, she knew she was not just an artist, she was a pioneer in her own right, conquering fears and painting a new future for herself and her community. Now is your chance to show your support. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire transformation. Leave a like now to fuel the algorithm and keep our community thriving. We want to hear your thoughts. Comment below with your reactions and theories about this conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see the power of personal overcoming.